sun burned across the dusty streets of Ouagadougou, turning the air into gold. Heat rippled over broken roads, over tin roofs, over a tiny roadside garage where life moved slowly until the convoy arrived. Engines hummed. Tires crunched over gravel. But this wasn't the massive armored parade you'd expect from a president. No, this convoy was modest, quiet, human, and from one of the vehicles stepped a man dressed not in glittering medals, but in simplicity. Captain Ibrahim Traoré, young, calm, focused, a leader who rose not for power but for purpose, a man who refused to drown his nation in luxury while his people struggled to survive. There were no walls between him and the people, no golden chairs, no red carpets, only dust, sunlight, and truth. Across from him stood a mechanic named Musa, hands stained with grease, shirt soaked with sweat, heart pounding against his ribs. He had just finished repairing the president's car. Not a luxury limousine, not a foreign armored beast, just a simple vehicle like the people drove. Ibrahim reached into his pocket, quietly pulling out cash. Payment, respect, acknowledgement for honest work. But then, Musa froze. His hands trembled. His throat tightened. The world around him felt silent. How could he, a simple mechanic, accept money from a man who chose to walk beside his people instead of above them? He stepped back. He refused. And the street held its breath. What would happen now? Would the president be offended? Would the soldiers step in? Would pride clash against power? Every eye watched. Every heart waited. Because this moment wasn't about money. It was about the soul of a leader, the dignity of a worker, and the heartbeat of an entire nation. Earlier that day, the city had been alive with laughter, market voices, and the hum of motorcycles weaving through traffic. Nothing suggested that destiny was quietly arranging a meeting on a forgotten street, beside a garage built from wood, rust, and dreams. Ibrahim's convoy hadn't planned to stop. He had been on his way to visit a new agricultural project, one of many steps toward making his country independent, strong, and free from the shadows of foreign control. But fate whispered otherwise. A grinding noise, smoke curling from under the hood. A concerned driver turning to him. "Sir, we need to stop." No panic, no shouting. Just Ibrahim's calm reply. "Find the nearest mechanic. We'll fix it here." And that's how they arrived at Musa's tiny shop, a place built not from wealth, but from years of hard work and hope. Musa rolled out from beneath an old pickup truck, and when he looked up, time seemed to stop. The president, standing in the dust, under the same blazing sun as everyone else. No distance, no arrogance, only presence. "Brother," Ibrahim said gently, "we have a problem with our vehicle. Can you help us? Not citizen, not worker, not servant. Brother." Musa's heart shook inside his chest. He had heard the stories, how this young leader lived simply, refused excess, walked among the people. But hearing something and standing face to face with it are two very different things. "Why yes, Mr. President, of course," Musa whispered. Ibrahim smiled, warm, kind, human. "Please, call me Ibrahim. Take your time. We are not in a hurry." And then he did something that stunned everyone. He didn't rush into a cool office. He didn't order his men around. He didn't act powerful. He simply sat down on an old wooden bench, the same cracked bench villagers used every day, and watched Musa work. No barriers, no titles, only respect. Whispers began to spread like wildfire across the street. "The president is here." Children peeked from corners. Shop owners paused mid-sale. People gathered, not out of fear, but out of love, pride, and disbelief. For 45 long minutes, Musa worked. Every bolt, every wire feeling heavier than ever. What if he failed? What if he made a mistake? But every time fear rose inside him, he glanced over and saw Ibrahim watching patiently, nodding calmly as if to say, "I trust you." And then, finally, the engine roared back to life. But that wasn't the moment everyone would remember. The moment came next, when Ibrahim reached for his wallet, and Musa, with shaking hands, refused. And what happened after that would leave the entire nation in tears. Thought balloon, what do you think a true leader would do next? Stay with me, because the next part of this story reveals a truth about leadership, humility, and the power of respect that the world needs to hear. The engine purred softly now. Steady, calm, almost alive. Musa wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stepped back from the hood. His chest rose and fell with relief. For a moment, the world was just the sound of that engine, and the soft whisper of wind blowing dust across the street. It's done, sir. It's done, Ibrahim, he finally said. Ibrahim stood, brushed the dust from his trousers, and walked slowly toward the car. He didn't rush. He listened. He leaned closer, like a man listening to the heartbeat of a friend. Then he smiled, wide, genuine, full of pride. Excellent work, brother. You truly have a gift. His hand came down gently on Musa's shoulder, not the hand of a ruler descending upon a servant, but the hand of one man honoring another. Then Ibrahim reached into his pocket, and everything changed, because what he pulled out wasn't a small payment. It wasn't a folded bill. It was a thick bundle of francs, the kind that could feed a family for weeks, maybe months. For your time, for your skill, for your honesty, he said softly. He extended his hand. The money hovered in the air like a test, like a moment frozen in time. And Musa did not move. His eyes locked on the bundle. His chest tightened. His fingers twitched, but they didn't rise to take it. His heart pounded in his ears louder than the running engine. Around them, the crowd fell silent. Mothers holding children, old men leaning on canes, teenagers perched on old motorbikes. Even the marketplace seemed to pause, because this wasn't just a payment. This somehow had become a question of the soul. Ibrahim spoke first, his voice gentle. Please take it. You worked hard. You earned every coin. But Musa stepped back. Then another step. His hands began to shake. His lips trembled as tears filled his eyes. Twice he tried to speak. Twice his voice failed him. Finally, the words came out. Cracked, heavy, full of years of pain. No, sir. I cannot. The security detail stiffened instantly. Hands moved toward radios. Eyes narrowed. No one refused a president, not out of disrespect. Not ever. One guard stepped forward. But Ibrahim raised his hand. Calm, firm, commanding, and the street fell still again. He turned back to Musa. Brother, why? You did excellent work. You deserve to be paid. Musa swallowed hard, trying to steady his voice, but emotion flooded through him like a storm. And then, he spoke the truth of an entire nation. For years, he began, his words trembling, we watched leaders take, and take, and take. His hands swept across the street. The cracked walls, the faded paint, the worn faces. They took our resources. They took our dignity. They took our future. His voice broke, tears spilling freely now. They drove cars worth more than everything I own. They built palaces while we could barely feed our children. We struggled. We begged. We cried. And nobody listened. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Heads nodded. Some people wiped their eyes, because they remembered every broken promise, every empty speech, every humiliation. Musa continued, stronger now, not just speaking for himself, but for thousands, millions. And then you came. He looked directly into Ibrahim's eyes, not as a subject to a ruler, but as a son to a father, as a citizen to a leader he finally believed in. You chose simplicity. You chose humility. You chose us. He gestured toward the humble convoy, toward the dusty bench where Ibrahim had sat patiently like any other man. You walk with soldiers. You sit with villagers. You don't hide behind walls. You don't drown in luxury. You speak of dignity, of freedom. He paused, wiping tears with grease-stained hands, leaving streaks across his cheeks. You remind us that this nation belongs to its people. People began to cry openly now. Some clasped their hands together. Others whispered prayers, because these weren't just speeches they'd heard on the radio. These were actions, real, visible, undeniable. "So how," Musa whispered, voice cracking, "can I take money from a man who gives everything back to his people?" Silence fell, deep, heavy, holy. Even the wind seemed to stop moving. The security chief leaned in and whispered urgently, "Sir, this creates complications, expectations. We can't let people refuse compensation like this." But Ibrahim didn't answer him, because this wasn't about policy anymore. This was about heart. Musa took a slow, trembling breath, gathering his courage. "My president," he said softly, "if you truly want to pay me," he placed his hand over his heart, "then keep building our country. Keep fighting for justice. Keep standing with us." He lifted his chin, still shaking but unbroken. "That is payment enough, not just for me, but for every mechanic, every farmer, every mother, every child." And when he finished, the entire world seemed to disappear. No car sounds, no footsteps, no voices, only truth hanging in the air. Everyone looked to Ibrahim, because in that moment the meaning of leadership stood trial. Would he force Musa to take the money? Would pride react before wisdom? Would power demand obedience? Or would something greater emerge? The guards watched tensely. The people leaned forward. Musa stood rooted, half afraid, half hopeful. And then Ibrahim did something that stunned them all. Slowly, very slowly, he lowered his hand. The money remained in his palm, untouched, but the gesture carried the weight of history. Then he smiled. Not a shallow, political smile. No, this was the smile of a man who understood. A man who listened. A man who felt. A smile that softened his face and reached his eyes. A smile that said, "I am not above you. I am with you." The tension melted from the street like snow under the sun. But Ibrahim wasn't finished. He looked at Musa, truly looked at him, as if he were the only person on earth. And he spoke quietly, yet every soul in that crowd heard him. "Brother, today you have taught me something precious. That leadership is not measured by power, but by the love and trust of one's people." His voice deepened, steady, sincere, unshakable. "If I ever forget this, remind me. If I ever lose my way, speak out. Because a leader without the truth of his people is lost." He placed the money gently back into his pocket. Not because Musa refused it, but because this moment had grown beyond currency, beyond transactions. This had become a covenant, a silent promise between a leader and the people he served. The crowd erupted, not in cheers of noise, but in a wave of emotion. Some people cried, others hugged. Some fell to their knees in gratitude, not for a king, but for a servant leader. A woman shouted from the back, "May God protect you, Ibrahim." A young boy whispered to his father, "Papa, one day I want to be like him." And Musa simply bowed his head, overwhelmed, a tear falling into the dust at his feet. He had refused money, but what he received instead was dignity, respect, and something priceless, hope. Ibrahim turned to his security team, still calm, still grounded. "Let this be remembered," he said simply. "A nation is not built with money alone. It is built with honor." Then he turned back to Musa. "And brother, if ever my car breaks down again," he smiled warmly, "I know exactly where to come." Laughter rippled warmly across the crowd. Not mocking, but joyful, human, alive. And as the convoy finally drove away, engines steady, spirits lifted, the street remained full of conversation, emotion, and pride. Because everyone knew they hadn't just witnessed a repair, they had witnessed a revelation, a reminder that true power doesn't shout, it doesn't demand, it doesn't stand above. True power kneels beside. True leadership listens. True dignity is shared. And somewhere inside that dusty garage, Musa wiped his eyes, looked at his grease-covered hands, and whispered to himself, "Maybe our future really has begun." The air felt heavier now, not because of the heat, but because every single heart on that street knew they were witnessing something rare, something sacred. And then Ibrahim did something that took everyone by surprise. He didn't stand tall as a president. He didn't speak with authority. Instead, he simply extended his hand to Musa, not as a leader, not as a man with power, but simply as one human being to another. "Brother," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion, "you have given me something far more valuable than anything I could ever give you." Musa hesitated, his hands still trembling, his chest rising and falling rapidly. But slowly, almost shyly, he reached forward and took Ibrahim's hand. And in that moment, Ibrahim didn't shake his hand like a politician. He pulled him into a warm embrace, a true brotherly hug. Right there in the dust, in the heat, in front of the world. The crowd gasped, because never had they seen a president hug a simple mechanic with such sincerity, such love, such respect. When they finally stepped apart, Ibrahim kept his hand on Musa's shoulder. His voice rose, strong, steady, so that the entire crowd could hear. "This brother here," he said, pointing gently toward Musa, "could have taken the money, and God knows, he probably needs it." The crowd murmured in agreement. They all knew what poverty felt like. They knew hunger. They knew struggle. They knew what it meant to work hard and still fall short. Ibrahim continued, "God knows every one of us has suffered. We have watched our wealth disappear. We have watched our resources leave our land. We have watched our children cry from hunger while others grow rich from what belongs to us." Many people began to cry openly now. For once, they felt seen. They felt heard. "But instead of taking the money," Ibrahim said, "he reminded me and all of us that what we are building is bigger than money, bigger than politics, bigger than power." He paused, letting the words sink in. "We are building dignity. We are reclaiming our sovereignty. We are saying to the world, our country is not for sale." The street exploded in cheers. "Burkina Faso! Burkina Faso!" they chanted. Tears fell freely. Hands lifted to the sky. Hearts swelled with a pride many had not felt in generations. Ibrahim raised his hand gently, and the noise slowly faded. He turned back to Musa, and now his tone softened. "But brother Musa," he said, "I want to make you a promise, not as president to citizen, but as one Burkinabe to another." Musa swallowed hard. His eyes glistened. He listened, heart pounding. "I promise you this. Every franc we save, every resource we reclaim, every grain of food grown in our soil, every drop of gold mined from our earth will not be stolen. It will not leave this country. It will build schools. It will build hospitals. It will build roads. It will feed families. It will restore dignity." His voice deepened, full of conviction. "And I promise you, I will never forget this moment. Standing here in your humble garage, being reminded that leadership is not about taking. Leadership is about giving everything for the people." The crowd went silent again, hanging on every word, knowing they were witnessing history. "And when the story of our new Burkina Faso is written," Ibrahim said slowly, "your name, Musa the mechanic, will be there, because you showed us what it means to believe in something greater than yourself." Musa's legs nearly gave out beneath him. Emotion overwhelmed him. He whispered, voice barely audible, "I just want my children to grow up in a free Burkina Faso." "And they will," Ibrahim responded instantly, firm and unshakable. "I swear it." And then, one voice began to sing, softly at first, the national anthem. Another voice joined, then another, until the entire street, the entire crowd, lifted their voices together. Men, women, children, soldiers, workers, elders, all singing, not out of duty, but out of love, hope, pride. Even Ibrahim and Musa sang, tears streaming down their faces, carried by the sound of unity that filled the sky. When the anthem finished, the crowd fell into a reverent silence. Ibrahim leaned closer to Musa and spoke quietly, just for him. "Your garage brother. Tell me, what do you need? Tools? Repairs? Training? Musa immediately began to shake his head. No, sir, I cannot. But Ibrahim gently raised a hand. This is not payment for today. This is an investment in our future. You are skilled. Our nation needs skilled people. So tell us what you need to serve our people better, and we will make it happen. Musa could not speak. He could only nod, overwhelmed, tears falling silently. Before leaving, Ibrahim turned to the crowd one last time. Remember this day. Remember that we stand together. Mechanic, farmer, teacher, soldier. We are all Burkinabe, and together we will build our free nation. The people cheered not for power, but for hope. The repaired vehicle rolled away smoothly, engine strong, much like the spirit of the people who watched it disappear into the distance. But the real transformation was only beginning. In the days that followed, news of the encounter spread everywhere, across cities, across villages, across borders. But the biggest change wasn't in the headlines. It was in hearts. People traveled from far and wide to Musa's garage, now famous across Ouagadougou. Not because he was the greatest mechanic, but because he represented something sacred: courage, integrity, dignity. And Ibrahim, he kept his promise. A government team arrived, but they didn't bring gifts. They brought opportunity, new tools, a renewed workshop, a proper training facility where young men and women could learn mechanical skills, so they could feed their families with honor. Soon, Musa wasn't just fixing cars. He was training a generation, building futures, changing lives. And people began to say, "Would you accept the money that Musa refused?" It became a test of conscience, a mirror held up to corruption, a reminder that some things cannot be bought. Months passed, then a year, and one ordinary afternoon Ibrahim returned. No parade, no announcement. He simply walked into the workshop, smiling softly as he watched students practicing repairs, their faces bright with determination. Musa turned, saw him, and instantly tears filled his eyes again. They embraced like brothers. "Look at what you've built," Ibrahim said. But Musa shook his head. "No. Look at what we are building together." They walked through the center, speaking with students. One young woman told Ibrahim she dreamed of specializing in electric vehicles to help their nation transition to renewable energy. Ibrahim beamed with pride. "This," he said, "is the future." Before leaving, he gathered everyone. "A year ago," he said gently, "this man refused to take my money." His hands were shaking, but his spirit was strong. And in that moment, he reminded me that true leadership is not privilege. It is a sacred trust. He looked around the room, eyes shining. "We are not just repairing vehicles. We are repairing our nation's soul." Applause thundered, not forced, but from hearts overflowing with belief. And as Ibrahim stepped outside, a song rose once more. Not the anthem this time. A new song. A song written about a president and a mechanic. A song about dignity, sovereignty, and the courage to believe in something greater than oneself. And that is why this story will never be forgotten. Because it was never just about money, or cars, or one man. It was about a nation rediscovering its pride. It was about ordinary people standing tall, unafraid. It was about leadership that serves, not rules. It was about the radical truth that a mechanic and a president are equal sons of the same land, and both are needed to build a free and sovereign nation. And that legacy now lives in every student who trains at Musa's Center, in every citizen who refuses corruption, in every child who dares to dream, and in every heart that remembers dignity is priceless, freedom is sacred, and hope is unstoppable. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to follow and share so more people can feel the power of compassion, leadership, and unity. Because together, we build the future.